Man, it's definitely weird being up here. Uh, it's definitely something that I've wanted for a long time. I always, when I came in as a freshman, I always thought that God would eventually get me up here and start preaching. And you know what? 4 years later, it's finally up here. So, glory to God. First and foremost, I want everybody to look back there and give a big round of applause to the media team because week out, they are always back there doing that thing. And just to show you that it's not just me, I mean, I wasn't even back there. I wasn't allowed back there. And so that's the team back there. I mean, man, I love them to death. And they are what I love. I mean, they're like my brothers and sisters back there. So, all right. So, before I dive into what I'm going to talk about, I want to kind of give a little background history on where I came from. I am from Houston, Texas. I have my original plan was my original plan was always to be an Aggie. I was made to be an Aggie. I know I was. I have like Aggie blood. My parents brainwashed me to be an Aggie, and so I know I see you can know. And so I was like, I mean, I came up to WT, and my plan was to come up here for a year, get my grades to where I needed to be, and then get out of here. I was not planning on staying here at all. I think a lot of us, some people probably out there as well, I see Emily, that was definitely not the case either. We wanted to get out of here. We were like, oh, Division II? Really? Like, yeah, exactly. I'll get to that. And so one of the things that got me involved here was Maroon Platoon. You always know where they're at. And one of the things that got me involved was Cooper. I know I had like a freshman look when I was just walking around Kimbrough Stadium, and at the time I'm looking for beer or girls, one of the two. I didn't matter which one came first, but that's what I was looking for. And so I'm walking around, and I know I had that like freshman look where you're just kind of dazed, and you're like, where am I? I don't have friends yet. And so, I mean, I'm wandering around, and I remember seeing Cooper, and I'm pretty sure I know the look he has is because I see it with freshmen nowadays as well. You go up, and he knew that I was lost, and he's like, hey, man, like, do you like to paint up? I'm like, well, I mean, yeah. And he goes, well, we sit on the 50-yard line at the football game. We paint up. We have free food. And I heard free food, so I already was like, all right, I'm there. Where are we going? So I was like, okay, free food, go in there to hang out, make new friends. I was down for it. From that, I got involved with the fifth quarter right after that. And as we know, we all like to dance and we like to have fun. But for me, I'm going there for girls. I'm not really going there to like, my plan, and I'll be honest, I was planning on going up there, trying to find a girl and start bumping and grinding the whole night. But apparently I didn't know that I stepped into a church. So, and so as we're going, I have all that, and I get involved there. And from there, I get involved at Two Posts, and I get involved with all this kinds of stuff. And from there, I started making my way onto leadership. And whenever I first joined leadership, I didn't understand exactly what I was getting into. People were telling me, like, hey, like, you would be a really good leader, or you would be a really good leader. I'm like, well, I mean, I've had bad experience about being a leader. Usually when I try leading people, they don't like what I do or they don't like what I say. So I was like, it's not for me. And one of the guys that I remember talking to, his name was Jarrett Johnston. And he was the media team leader before, the guy that was before me, which was JR. And then it became to me. And I remember Jarrett saying, like, man, what do you plan on doing with your legacy here? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I mean, what's your kind of end goal? Like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be? And I was like, I have no idea. And he's like, well, man, like, one thing you can do, I mean, like, try joining leadership. Give it a shot. You never know what God can do in your life with it. It's like, okay, I'll do it. And so from looking at all that, I thought that being on leadership, that would end, like, okay, I'm on leadership. That's all I'm going to be doing. But I didn't realize how much I was going to be involved with leadership as I was. Apparently everybody else knew it, but not me. And so one of the things that, and the biggest reason why I didn't think I could really do a good job with being a leader was because I was looking up to like these big, big people. I was looking up to Tarak. I was looking up to Cooper. I was looking up to Jared Johnston, J.D. Newman. Another guy was, I mean, he was before I even got here, and everybody said that I was just going to be just like him, which was Bo Niewarner. And I had been looking up to all these people. I've been hearing all these people, and I was going, I can never be like them. I can never be like them. And so, coming down the road to here, I am not trying to sound like I am like, woo, but I think it's safe to say that I think some of y'all see that as whoever stands up here, that you can't reach to where they've gotten. You feel like you can't get to that leap. You feel like there's too much of a gap that you can't get anywhere close to them at all. And so the question that I have is, how do you get from point A to point B? How do you go from here to there? How do you become from somebody who was doing maybe alcohol, maybe or drugs, or maybe you were just like, you know what, I'm not really serious about God. Like, I mean, he's good, like, thank God. But, I mean, you're not really friendly, like, you're not close relationship. And so one of the things there's going to be 3 people that we're talking about tonight. And if you have your Bibles, I encourage you to flip over to Genesis chapter 22. Okay, and I just want to do this real quick. Who here has their Bible? Raise your hands. Okay. I'm about to say, I actually found my brother's Bible, like, in my room. I didn't even know I had it. And so I was like, oh, well, good. I have his Bible. And it's bigger than mine. Mine's like a little bitty Bible. So flip over to Genesis chapter 22, verse 1. Stay open. Okay. So the first person that we're going to talk about is Abraham. Now, if you've heard this story, if you haven't, we're going to go through it, okay? And this is just one little section of Abraham. And so the first part of Abraham, or the one section we're going over, is when Abraham was called by God to sacrifice Isaac. Now I have a question. Have you ever had a moment when you don't really want to listen to God? Like, he tells you to do something and be like, yeah, I mean, like, you don't really want to. All right. If you've read this story, I encourage you not to jump straight to the end. I want you to read it going through. Because we all know some of these stories, but we see the end thing and we know what's going to happen. So read it as in this perspective of, like, through what Abraham was going. So starting in chapter 22, verse 1. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and saddled his donkey. He took with him 2 servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place that God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Okay, so pause, okay? Abraham has just been called by God to sacrifice his son. Now, like I said, it's that moment when you hear God, you're like, that's not really God. That may be just something in my head. I mean, I don't really want to acknowledge that just because, like, that's a hard thing. And to give you a little backstory, Abraham has been promised Isaac. If you don't know the story, Abraham was promised Isaac. God said that I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars. And it started with Isaac. He was the promise. Yes, he had a son named Ishmael, but Isaac was the promise that God had for him. And so, reading on, he is having to lay down something that God has promised him. So, Abraham does not know God's plan, okay? Abraham does not know, thanks, Eddie. Abraham does not know God's plan. He doesn't know what the end effect is. He's just going forth. He's staying faithful in what he's doing. And he even knows that the boy is, like, Isaac is going to come back with him on this mountain. After God said, sacrifice him, kill him, but he's still confident that he's going to come back. Isaac is going to come back. That's what he's telling them right there. I just want to stress that point. All right, continuing on in verse 6. Abraham took the... da-da-da-da. All right. So continuing on in verse 6, Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. And he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm going to pause real quick. So what it's saying right there. So Isaac carried the wood on his back. Now, have you ever thought about Isaac? Do you think he's a boy? Do you think he's a man? Do you think he's an adult? What do you think? Kid, teenager? 9? There's no clear answer on what Isaac's age is. I personally think that he's probably our age. I think he's in college, or I think he would be in college. He's around his 20s. because for this burnt offering, it was a normal-sized burnt offering, which means he probably was carrying pretty much like 2 to 3 big logs, little sticks, but basically logs on his back, which means he probably would have to be strong. He wouldn't be a little boy that's maybe like 10 or 12. No, he's probably either, I would say maybe 16 to 20. I don't know. I don't have facts on that, but that's kind of what I see him as. Now, think about it in Isaac's perspective. He doesn't know what they're going up to. He knows they're going to make a sacrifice, but he has no idea what he's going up there to do. He's carrying wood. He's carrying fire. He's carrying the knife. There's no sheep anywhere. Do you think for a moment that it went through his mind going, what's going on, Dad? And he even says that in verse 7. There you are. Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father, yes, my son." Abraham replied, "There is fire and wood here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together. So as you're saying this, Isaac sees that there's no offering. He acknowledges that, and even Abraham's like, there's no offering, but God will provide. Like I said, I don't think Isaac was an idiot. I think he had just as much faith as Abraham had, because he's probably putting the pieces together, wood, fire, lamb, and looking at himself. And putting the pieces together, that's what I would think. And so as he sees no offering, continuing on in verse, 9, my bad, thank you, Katie. When they reached the place God had told them about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Now again, pause. Isaac is letting Abraham tie his hands. Now, Abraham is probably over 100 right now. It said that Isaac was born when he was at 100. If your dad started tying rope around your hands and he starts about to put you on the altar, would you stay there or would you run? Exactly. Isaac had to have just as much faith as Abraham did to be able to say, okay, I don't know what's going on, God, but you've told my dad what to do. Abraham doesn't know what's going to go on, but he knows that God has told him to do this. Okay? And so, finishing up the story, then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Now looking at Abraham, looking at what he's doing, he does not know until the very last second. Now here's something I want to point out. He did not do this. Okay, because we know the end of the story. We knew that his heart was checked. But think about it in our lives today. If we had to do this and you knew the story, we kind of have the knife up, ready to go down. And we're like, all right, God's going to provide a lamb. Come on, God. God, I'm about to kill my son. God, I'm about to kill my idol. God, I'm about to, and then he does it, and he's like, you know what? You're not going to truly give him to me. You're not going to truly give it to me because I know your heart. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit of story about me. I have had kind of firsthand experience on this whole battle. This has not been the first time that this happened, and it's a really fun story. So, as you all know, if you don't, that beautiful blonde girl in the back, she was probably blushing right now. I had to take my shot while I could, okay? I just had to. Okay. But me and Mariah, we have not always been dating. We've only been dating for a year. Yeah, it's a shocker, right? We've only been dating for a year. And when I first got to college, I decided there was this thing that I've been hearing about, and it was called a vow. And what this vow was it was a time for you to sacrifice something that you love, that you want to be a part, it's your whole world, and you devote that to God. It's kind of like a fast, but it was more, for me, this was geared towards girls. Like I said, when I first came into college, I was thinking about drinking and girls. I knew girls was a big thing on my heart. And so I was like, God, I'm going to give this to you, not knowing what's going to happen in the future, but I'm going to give this to you 2 years of my time to where I'm doing nothing but pursuing you. So as I was doing this, It was about, I think it was 2013, and it was when I was working out at CETA. I had worked out there a year before, and this was my second year working out there. And I love CETA. I love everything else. And I really believe that this place is like a fusion. Like, if you watch Dragon Ball Z, it's a hyperbolic time chamber. Like, it literally trains you so much in a matter of like 2 to 3 months. And so if you've watched Dragon Ball Z, you'll know that reference. Anyway, there is, before I went out to CETA, I started going to a lot of dances with Mariah. Me and her, we went to this WT formal where we both get dressed up real nice. We went to her sorority formal, and we got real nice. And it's not that that was bad. It's not that that was bad. For me, my mindset at that time was, she asked me to go as a dancing partner. I'm like, all right, no problem. I love to do that because I always loved to dance. Like, I loved to two-step. And so for me, I'm going to go and like, this is just going to be a fun time. Well, all of a sudden, over the summer, I just got started at CETA, and she invited me to this barn dance. And when she explained it to me, she was saying that, hey, this is a high school dance that my brother's having. Could you come and teach them how to dance and have help us out? Like, we're really needing some help. And I go, yeah, no problem. Sound like fun. And when I went out there, I didn't realize, she didn't even notice that either, but it was like a whole family thing where I met her parents, I met her second family, I met all of her cousins, I met uncles and aunts. I was meeting everybody, and for me, I didn't realize that this was that close, and she's hiding back there right now, so. And I didn't know that it was happening like this. I didn't know that I was going to this. Not saying that that was bad, but I knew that I was getting, it never happened to me, but I'm not ignoring the obvious that her family, everybody was asking, so is he your boyfriend? Are y'all going to start dating? Start asking all those questions. I'm going, I'm not supposed to be pursuing after you right now. I wasn't even supposed to be pursuing after any girls, and I'm starting to go after Mariah, and I was like, this is not good. Because I was looking at that, and I go, oh, gosh, God, I know I'm breaking my vow with you. I know I'm cheating on you. I was breaking the one thing that I told God, I'm going to give you 2 years of my life, and I was already breaking that. And it tore me apart. I was driving home, and I was like, man, that was so much fun, but God, why am I feeling so bad? Like, why am I feeling this way, God? And he's just like, because you're breaking your commitment to me. You're not being faithful to me. And I was like, oh. And so I get back to CETA, and all of a sudden, if you've been out to CETA Canyon, up above Trust Cabin, there's a little telephone pole. And you would hike up there to get cell service so you could call whatever you need to. And I knew that God was saying, you need to make boundaries. You need to clear cut this. You need to set this right. You're pursuing her, and you said you're pursuing me. You need to make this right. I was like, all right. Like I said, this is something God was telling me. Hey, do this. And I'm like, God, I can just be good in my little thing. I get up on the ridge, and I call her up. And I'm talking for a few minutes, and I'm like, Mariah, I think we're going too fast. And I didn't tell her that I was on a vow. I didn't tell her that I was doing this thing. I just said, my heart is after the Lord right now. And right now, I am having a hard time trying to balance you. It's not time. It's not time. And it was me sticking to my word. And as I'm explaining this, guys, listen to me when I say this. This tore me apart because my phone died halfway in the conversation. If you want to see a white man run faster than anything else, so I'm up on this ridge, and instantly the phone dies, and I'm like, I ran down from that hill, down the hill, over the bridge, across the bridge, up the stairs, to my room. I grabbed my phone charger, got into my car, ran up to the little thing saying, hey, I'm going up there. Had to go up to the thing, and I'm waiting there because I have to wait for my phone to charge. It's not going to, no, it's dead. And I'm sitting there going, longest, and it might have been just a minute, but it didn't feel like that at all. And I am literally just like, she's going to hate me. She's going to hate me. She's still going to hate me. She thinks I'm going to hang up on her. I was like, oh, no. And I tried calling her back. My phone answers, and there's no answer. And I am like, instantly, I was like, all right, there's nothing I can do. She doesn't want to talk to me. I can't do anything about that. And I sent her a text. And I said, look, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm doing. It's nothing that you did wrong. It's me not being faithful. It's me not truly doing what God's called me to do. And I said, cling to God, because right now, I can't be that rock for you. Okay, so fast forward a little bit. this past summer, by the way, is there any water? I'm like really cotton mouth, but there is. Oh, thank you, Ben. Much better. Much better. Okay, so fast forward a little bit. Last summer, I worked for Bo Water. If you know him, he's a great guy. I worked down there as an intern, and we went to this conference called Desperation in Colorado Springs. And this is an awesome place. Now, as I was up there, God was, it was an awesome time. But God was talking about, one of the preachers, he was talking about Abraham. And I knew instantly where it was going. I knew instantly. Because this is after me and Mariah were starting to date for about 3 months. And I knew he asked, what's your most precious thing? And instantly, Mariah came to my mind. Instantly, she came to my mind. And I was like, I know where God's going to take me with this. And I was like already trying to tune him out before he could even say anything. Like I was trying like, no, not listening. And once again, God was asking for something that I thought that was most precious to me. And even after like how Isaac was to Abraham, God had promised Isaac to Abraham. Not saying that God promised me Mariah, but he had let me be able to date her. Let me be able to enjoy this walk with her and start walking with her. And not even 3 months go by, and God is telling me to break up with Mariah. Yeah, it just got deep. It was horrible. Absolutely horrible. Because I was like, God, you promised me this. And I fought with God as hard as I possibly could. I was fighting and fighting and fighting. And I was saying, God, what do you want me to do? He's like, break up with her. And I just didn't get it. I was like, but I don't get it. And I mean, there's going to be times that God does that in your life where you don't get what his plan is. But here's the question. Are you going to be faithful to the end, to that moment? I had this, and so as I'm going through, I was praying and praying and praying. And I was like, God, do you really want me to do this? And he said, yes. And I sat there for 5 minutes going, And I started writing it out. I started writing how to break up with Mariah. I started writing it down on all this paper, and I had it on my notepad. And I was ready to press call. And it sucked because I was going to have to do it over the phone as well because I couldn't shake this feeling. And I was about to press call, and I felt God say, I know your heart. I know your heart. If God is calling you to do something and you're not willing to stick the knife through it, then you're not truly sacrificing something. Even when Abraham didn't know God's plan, he was faithful until the end. Flip over to Job, chapter 1. It's getting hot. It's getting hot. So, another character that I want to look at is Job. And if you don't know much about Job, if you've never read the story, Job was one of God's servants. He was one of the top guys that God loved. It says that, and God says that he is blameless and upright. And to give a little bit of Job, what he is rich beyond compare. He has everything. He has 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 oxen, 500 donkeys, tons of servants. He has 7 sons and 3 daughters and a wife, and he could not be living better. Think about it. He could not be living better. That's the dream for us sometimes. We want a family down the road. We want to be financially fit. We want to have everything planned out for us and be God has blessed us immensely, or however you say that. And so now, God is up in heaven, and he calls all of his angels to him. Now, Lucifer is still an angel. Satan is still an angel, and he comes up into heaven, and he's kind of just walking around, just like that person that doesn't belong at the party? That's pretty much Satan. He's just walking around, he's just awkward, and everybody's looking at him, and it's all like, why are you here? And as he's walking around, he's kind of got a cocky attitude. He's like, yeah. And the reason why he has this is that he's looking around, and God asked him, where have you been? He's like, oh, I've been here, I've been there. You know what I've been doing? I've been making that person fall. been making her fall. I've been making all people fall. And you can't do nothing about it. And he's kind of like taunting God. He's like, yeah, I know. I can do better than you can. And all of a sudden, God goes in chapter 1, verse 8. He says, then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Now, looking at that, God is pointing out Job. He's saying, you know what? If you think you can make all these people, I'm going to give you a true challenge. Why don't you try my servant Job? Like, I mean, if you really think that you can do everything, try him. And he instantly is like, the only reason he loves you is because you've given him this. You've given him a car. You've given him a house. You've given him food. You've given him land. You've given him livestock. You've given him family, everything. And so as he's going along, God's like, well, try him. And he says, okay, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to let you do whatever you want to Job, except do not affect his health. And so he goes, okay. And this is pretty much in Job's life when the poop hits the fan. It just goes, gah, and just caca everywhere. In literally a matter of, like, moments, you see Job lose everything. There's lightning storms. There's earthquakes. There is, like, pretty much hurricane winds. He loses everything in a matter of, like, in, like, a few days, I would believe. And he's going through all these things, and you know what? And, like, each time you see this servant come up, it's like, all the livestock are gone, and then all this is gone, and all this is gone. Would you not want to be that servant? Like, you're telling your master, that everything's gone, and you're like, I don't really want to go over there. And so as he's losing everything, he even loses his sons and daughters, all of them. And they're all in a house, and the house collapses on top of them. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I am looking forward to the day when I can become a father. And I don't think there's going to be even greater sadness if I lose my children, like if I have to bury my children instead of my children burying me. That is going to be a tough, tough battle, okay? Now, I'm trying to get you in the mindset of what Job would be feeling, okay? Now, look over at Job 1, chapter 1, 20 and through 22. Oop, too far. And it says, and this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship and said, naked I came from the mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave me, the Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all things, Job did not sin, but by charging God with wrongdoings. Basically, what he's saying is that he did not turn from God, he did not go into sin, and he did not blame God for his troubles. Now, how many people can say that that's what we do? How many people can say, whenever you lose family, friends, maybe materialistic things like car, money, financial security, maybe it's a relationship, you've lost something big. There's a quote by Charles Stanley, and it says, too many Christians have a commitment of convenience. They'll stay faithful as long as it's safe and doesn't involve risk, rejection, or criticism. Instead of standing alone in the face of challenge or temptation, they check to see which way their friends are going. Isn't that true? I know it's deep. I know it's hard to swallow sometimes. But you're not going to truly stay faithful in God unless hardship comes. When everything's good and happy and you think nothing could go wrong with your life, that's whenever we're most in danger because we think that we're invincible. We think that, and it's so hard for us whenever something bad happens to like say, well, God, it's your fault. It's your fault that she left me. It's your fault that he left me. It's your fault that my parents are divorced. It's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. And saying, God, what Job says, naked I came from the mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of Lord be praised. He's still praising God through the hardships. And even then, he's still not done. His test is not even close to being done. Again, later on, you see God talking to Satan. He's like, you know what? Like, instantly, he is making excuses. Satan is making excuses on, you know what? He only did that because you didn't let me affect his health. If you personally, inside or tormented, then he will surely turn away from you and curse you. And he goes, okay, go for it. Challenge accepted by Barney Stinson. Challenge accepted. Satan tried to do it. And God knew that Job's heart was pure. God knew that he was not going to fall away. But he still allowed Job to go through the hardship. And as his health goes, he has boils covered from head to toe. And he does not feel good. You know, like the little blisters you get on the back of the ankle after you've worn shoes too long? He had that on the bottom of his feet. He had it all over his body, to where nothing is going to relieve that pressure until it's over. So, even when times are hard, even when times are easy, are you going to be faithful to the end? The last one I want to go to is Jesus. Now flip over to Matthew 26, starting in verse 36. Now, you can definitely preach a ton about Jesus. Like, there's so many stuff here. But the part that I really want to tune into is the Garden of Gethsemane. Okay? Now, we all know that Easter just happened, just a few weeks ago. And we know what God has gone through. Like, we know the crucifixion. We know that he was put to death. But I want to look at the moment right before all this happened. So starting in Matthew 26, verse 36. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and 2 sons of Zebedee along with him. And he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Now pause. That part right there, he says that he became sorrowful and troubled. I really like what it says in Mark 14:32, and it says that he was horrified. He was terrified of what was about to happen. Now, unlike Abraham and unlike Job, Jesus knew what was about to happen. He knew what was about to go down, and he still was going to go through with it. He was still going to be faithful. And as he's going on, he's like terrified about what's about to happen. Now, if you keep reading in verse 39, going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." He is still pleading to God. He's saying, "God, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this." In his flesh form, he's a human. He's mankind. There's multiple times when we don't want to do it because we know what's going to cause, we know what the end product is going to be. We know what we're going into, but yet we are like, "God, just take this from me, and I'll give you whatever you want." Like, "God, take this from me, and I'll give you my money at tithe." "God, take this from me," and no, he's not making excuses. He's literally saying, "God, if you can take this cup, if it is possible, yet not as my will, but your will be done." And so no matter what's going on, he is staying faithful to the very end. Now, going on, when he returns to his disciples in verse 40, then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Could you men not keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak." Now, why do you think he was so like, "Just stay awake. Please, please, just stay awake"? Because this just doesn't happen once. This happens 2 more times after this. So it's not something that is just once and done. No, it happened over and over again. And being Jesus, don't you think he would probably be a little angry? Like, come on. Like, it's just 1 hour. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking. Because he knows Judas is on his way. He knows that everything's about to go down. He's like, "Just please pray with me for this little bit of time." And then they still don't do it. And then all of a sudden, don't you think he'd be a little disappointed too? And why would he be disappointed? Looking at his disciples, everything that he had been working for, everything that he was working up to, was to train the disciples for when he left. He knew he was going to die. He predicts his death. And so he is trying to get them like, "Guys, you don't understand. I've told you this, that they will strike the shepherd and the sheep will flee." Pretty much saying that I'm about to die and you're going to be scattered everywhere. But he's wanting them to be like, "Come on, guys. Like, I want you to get there. I know what you're going to be going through, but I want you to be prepared for what's about to happen." And so I was thinking about that. And so those two things, anger and disappointment. I think another thing was sadness. Because it even says that he wept blood because he was so worried about what was about to happen. And I think the biggest thing why Jesus was so worried about what was about to happen was because he was about to face this alone. He did know that there was not going to be anybody there to help him. He was going to face this whole thing by himself. None of his disciples were going to be there. His mom couldn't get to him. And even later on, God has to turn his eyes away from God or from Jesus to where he is absolutely alone for himself. Nothing's going to come and save him. Nothing is going to come, and he is going to be by himself. Even when we're alone, are we still going to be faithful to the end? Because even Jesus, he even says in Matthew 26, verses 54, whenever Peter is literally about to cut off, he's cut off the guy's ear, the high priest's slave's ear. He cuts it off, and he's rebukes Peter, saying, "Put the sword away. That's not how this is going to go down. I must do my Father's will." And then he tells Peter, "Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled and it must happen in this way?" No matter what Jesus is doing, he is staying faithful to the end. Worship team, would you come? Guys, I want you to look at your lives like that. Just like Abraham, when he knows that he has to do something for God, when he knows he has to put down the most precious thing to him, are you going to be faithful to the end? What about Job? Whenever he is going through so much torture, both mentally, physically, and probably a little bit spiritually, to where he wants to just do nothing but blame God for his misery, he is still faithful until the end. And in those times when you're alone, those times when you feel like you have nobody else beside you, the times whenever you feel like, you know what, God doesn't truly care about me, or else he would have fixed this a long time ago. He would have put somebody in my way to stop me from doing whatever I'm doing. Are you going to stay faithful until the end? Looking over at Matthew chapter 25, verse 21. It's talking about this story of a servant. And his master has given him these little things. He's given him all these he's given him 5 talents. And his job is to take those out and to make it to where it's more than what he brought back. And after the time had gone by, he comes back, and it says in chapter 21, not right place. In chapter 21, his master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with all few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." Guys, what if that's you? What if God has asked you to be faithful in something that you don't want to be faithful in, or something that he's called you to be faithful in multiple times, but you keep ignoring exactly what he's wanting you to do? You're not staying faithful to the end. And when you're in front of God, think about it when you're in front of heaven, and God is looking at you face to face. I want to hear that, guys. I want to hear him say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Now, I said at the beginning, how do you get from point A to point B of being faithful? How do you get from where I was to Rock's level, or where you are to whoever you look up to? How do you get to that level? There's such a big gap that you can never get there. And do you want to know the answer? I don't know. I truly don't know. I don't know how I came from freshman Jon Jon to me now. I do know that no matter what happened, whatever I did, I have been faithful through everything. And am I at the end? No. I am not at the end until I stand in front of God and he tells me, well done, my good and faithful servant. And I can tell you right now, guys, there's been times, yes, it's hard, and you don't know where to go. There's times when you're not going to have anybody there, or you're going to lose everything following God. When they persecute you, when they torture you, when they spit in your face, know that you're not the only one they've done it to. Jesus was faithful to the very end. Now turning that onto you, maybe there were some things that you did that you wish you hadn't done. I've done that. But does that mean that you can't be in front of God? No. Whenever we say faithful to the end, no matter how many times we mess up, we still come to God. Whenever we have those moments when we think that we should just give up, it's up to you. I cannot stand up here and tell you that you have to continue on. Only you can tell yourself that. Our biggest enemies are ourselves. And if you want to give up, give up. But if you want to hear God say at the up in heaven when you get there, well done, my faithful servant, then you got to start with the little things. Don't think that you can just go from point A to point B. You're not going to make this jump. If I tried to jump from that stage all the way across, I'm going to eat it and hit it right here in the middle. But that does not mean that I'm not going to make it one day. If I got up on that side and I take one step up, I'm making a difference. If I make another step, I'm making a difference. And it seems like this impossible task that you are never going to get starts becoming easier and easier because you start taking those little steps towards God. Being faithful to the very end does not mean that we are just faithful at the end. We have to continually walk towards God. And yes, I know school gets in the way. Yes, I know family gets in the way. Yes, I know relationships get in the way. But that is not an excuse. You have to be faithful to the end and not just at the end. Because whenever you stand in front of God, it's just going to be you and him. It's not going to be what you've done in life. It's not going to be what you've done through school. It's not going to be done with any of that. It's going to be what you have done to be faithful to God. I want everybody to close their eyes. Tonight, if you feel like you haven't been faithful, tonight, if you feel like God is just too far away from you, the first step is coming down and admitting it. The first step is being faithful with the little things and taking that one little step. Because one little step is going to make a huge difference compared to a big jump. And know that it is okay to fail as long as you stay faithful. The second thing, if you happen to be going good right now, just like Job was, and all of a sudden you have that moment and everything's good, and all of a sudden, bam, something is hit hard. You've had a family loss. You have medical issues. You have all these things that you're not worried about, or that you're worried about, and then God's just like, just be faithful to me, and I promise you that it's going to be okay. One thing that I didn't talk about was Job literally had God bless him twice as much as he did before. But he was faithful to the end. He didn't know what God had planned. So if all of a sudden things are good right now, but you've hit a roadblock, come down here and ask for God to help you through that moment. And then lastly, even in those moments when you feel alone, when you feel like you can't turn to anybody else, God is always going to be there. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but it's true. God is always going to be there for you through the thick and thin. The one verse that I thought about at the very end, after God has told me, well done, my good and faithful servant, the thing that I want to say back to God 2 Timothy 4:7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith. Father, I pray that tonight, that you would just empower us to take that little step forward. Lord, I know it's a big gap, and I know it's a big race, and I know it's a big fight. But God, I want to say at the very end that no matter what I went through, no matter who has hurt me, no matter who has done wrong by me, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how much I feel alone, no matter what, I am going to be faithful to the end. I'm not going to go away from you, God. I can't promise you that I'm not going to fail, but I'm going to be faithful. Guys, please